Hold on tight for the next hour. You're entering into a place, a zone called the alternative to the alternative media. It's a place, a special place where even truth seekers fear to tread.
All right, people, let's move like we've got a purpose.
Affirmative.
Okay, we're back again, starting off a new week on the Investigative Journal on this February 19th, 2018 day on our calendar. And before I get started, today I want to talk a little bit about the Jesuit Agenda. We discussed last week how the Jesuits had been infiltrating Protestant churches for a long, long time, and specifically the Seventh-day Adventists we talked about last week. This week I want to give a little bit of an overview of the problem to people who really haven't understood it. And I get a lot of listeners who come into this show blind, in a sense, and I want to give you some background information so that when we start discussing this more in general, or more specifically, I should say, you're better equipped to handle it. But before we do this, I want to mention that on the Investigative Journal, we're pairing up with several companies in order to keep this show going. And last week I talked about Hemp for Health and Wealth, which is a website that I have up. And I put up something where you could get involved. And I did get a few people who decided to get started with this company. And what I mean by this is a way for you to make some money, a way to work at home, and a way also to help out with people that are having ailments, whether it be arthritis or other things. This could help you a lot. So go back to my website at greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com and you can read about it. And let me go over it because I have another company today that I'm working with that you can get in contact through me and get a great look at this company. It's going to help out small businesses who cannot get funded by traditional banks. And this company, I've searched it out, is probably one of the best out there, plays fair, by the rules, and also if you want to get involved helping people get loans, they pay pretty well, and they pay on time. So I'll get to that company in a second. It's called Mom and Pop Traditional Loans. So anyway, let me get to that in a minute. But first of all, I want to provide this money-making and or healthy living opportunity to my loyal subscribers and people who listen to this show first. It'll help keep us on the air as well as helping you working and supporting these hemp products, as well as providing you an opportunity to work from home as a sales associate free of charge. It's a company, a lot of these companies charge you money to get involved. This one doesn't. So you can work at home, a chance to make a good income, and pay attention. And your timing is perfect if you're listening to my show. Go to my website at greganthonysjournal.com and you can start buying these hemp oil products. And it's the hottest product on the market today. This is not like marijuana. It doesn't have any THC to get you high. Airline pilots, athletes, firemen, policemen can use it. And you can do so legally in all 50 states, including Canada and Mexico. So anyway, go to my website. The company's called CTFO, Changing the Future Outcome. And if you sign up under me, you can help keep the show on the air, and I appreciate it. So go there and look at this company. And I got a whole big article on it for you to look at. And you can get involved through me by listening to the Investigative Journal, as well as, contacting me. If you want to contact me at gregbeacon@gmail.com, I'll personally talk to you about it. So if you want to do that, fine. Okay, I want to move on because I'm always trying to help you out here. Before we get into an overview of what I consider to be a huge problem with Christianity today, let me talk about this company that can help you if you're in business. Okay, what I found over the years, and I found this by owning a couple of restaurants, one in South Dakota a couple in South Dakota. What I found is that traditional banks right now really are not loaning to small businesses. So I started saying, well, how can people get money they need through a legitimate company? I mean, not a rip-off company. You find a lot of them out there. And I found one called Mom and Pop Merchant Solutions, the Small Business Loan Company. Now, they've been in business now for, God knows, I think it's about 15 years. And the guy who runs it, I know, I've talked to, and I wouldn't lead you astray. If you're a business person out there and you can't get a loan from the bank, contact me, and there's a way to do it. I'm going to put that on my website today. And you can do it through just contacting gregbeacon@gmail.com. Say you're interested in an unsecured business loan. Let me explain it to you. You're going to go into a bank and they're going to tell you, we're not financing your restaurant. We're not financing your floral company. We're not financing it. You're too much of a risk. Well, here, this company's been financing millions and millions of dollars, loans anywhere from $2,500 to $1 million, and 98% of the people who apply get funded within 5 business days. Okay? Unheard of. Well, here's how it works. This was established to satisfy the lack of available financing in the small, medium-sized business marketplace. Now, if you have a brick-and-mortar store or if you have an online business, you can be funded. So don't think you can't get any needed capital if you're an online business. So we provide this company, and we're teaming up with it on the Investigative Journal. We provide businesses, they say, this is Mom and Pop, with unsecured business loans, alternatives called merchant cash advances. Now, in 49 states, it's really a loan. They call it merchant cash advances, and it's called business loan in California. Okay. Funding usually and most often takes place in 5 business days. And this company specializes in customizing programs, providing business owners with unsecured business loan alternatives on the terms that make most sense for their business. Okay. Now, what do? They provide funding through factor future credit card sales and business income. Now, they purchase future receivables at a discount. There's no fixed payback time or schedule or repayment, and no fixed interest rate. Instead, an agreed-upon holdback percentage is deducted from the merchant's daily credit card batches, or HCD or ACHD from their bank account until the purchase's amount is collected. So, therefore, the merchant is only paying a part of its Visa, MasterCard, Discover, and or banking revenue. And it's not going to they don't take out anything that's going to put your business in jeopardy. In fact, for example, let's say you take out $10,000 and you need it for payroll, or you need it for another reason, buying a pizza oven. Okay, which I had to do, and let me tell you, that was tough. Because if I'd had this company, I'd have done it right away. Now, on that $10,000, you're going to probably pay back 13, but you're going to do it over a period of time at a reasonable amount every day, in a sense. And I wouldn't have minded that. If you took 1% of my daily receipts when I was running my restaurant, I wouldn't have minded one bit if I could get that pizza oven. But I had to dip into funds, and it really hurt me. I was like struggling that week to make payroll. So really what's happening here is this company's providing money, unsecured debt, to you. They're not going to hold your children hostage. They're not going to hold your car title, and they're not going to hold your any paper on your house. Basically, all you have to do is be in business for 6 months, show your receipts on a credit card for 3 months and your bank statements for 3 months. Because let's say you're asking for $50,000 and you only make $2,000 a month, it doesn't add up. And also, no credit reports, nothing like that. So nobody, you go to a bank, they're going to turn you down. And many small business people don't even bother going to banks anymore. And that's how these companies grew up. And this one, for example, is a reputable one, and I can verify that through checks that I've made. So if you're a business person out there and you want to need some needed capital, whether it be a floral shop, many different, any kind of company, contact me at gregbeacon@gmail.com. I'm going to put some information on my website. And not only will that help me fund this show, but it also can get you some capital on small businesses. Even if you're in the cannabis business, medical marijuana business, we can fund you there. So don't forget to do that. And let me go through a few more things. The processing average, you're looking at, they're funding anywhere from $2,500 per month, $2,500 to $1 million. And the underwriting process is real easy. And don't be ashamed to file, if you need some money, meet your payroll, expand your inventory, improve facilities, advertise, pay taxes, open a new location, pay operating expenses. This is one of the fastest, easiest ways to get risk-free capital. Better than a traditional loan, no collateral. Better than a lifelong partnership, no restrictions on use of proceeds. You can use it for what you want. They're not going to come hounding you. You get the money, you use it for what you want. And most people, are pretty upfront, and they use it for what the items I mentioned above. So go to my website at greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com. If you're in business and you need some capital, contact me, and I'll get we'll get you started on it. And in turn, you can help this show, and in turn, you can help yourself. And I'll put that up on my website. And contact me if you're a business owner that's looking for some extra capital. Okay, so like I said, here on the Investigative Journal, we like to help out our listeners, many businesses, many people that listen to this show are not in the mainstream. And let me tell you what, I provided you with an opportunity for your health in these new medical marijuana, cannabis, and hemp products, company that you can also work from home and make some money. And also, if you're a business owner out there, to get some needed capital without having to be turned down from a bank. Because these traditional banks, they're not helping the small businessmen. They're helping the big Rockefellers and Rothschilds and all the Vatican entities we talk about on this show. They wouldn't have a problem getting $1 million like that, would they? So, we're here to help on the Investigative Journal. Now, last week, I started with a week's worth of shows regarding the infiltration of the Sda Churches. Now, I was looking at it and I said, there's a lot of people that really don't understand this, so I wanted to go back a little bit today and talk in general. So I wanted to put it together pretty quickly, and I found a decent article on a website called understandingthetimes.org, and I thought I'd use that as a guideline here to start. And it's the Jesuit Agenda and the Evangelical Protestant Church. Now, it's things that I've talked about for over 25 years, and I will add my 2 cents to what this writer is saying. Okay? Now, in this article, they start out by saying, according to Bible prophecy, a one-world religion that will offer the promise of peace through the world is going to commence prior to Christ's return. So we're talking about a Christian view here. Christ returning, and prior to that, what's going to happen, they're saying? And they're saying there's going to be a promise of peace from a evil organization that's going to hoodwink the world in believing that the Messiah has come, but it will be a false one, correct? That's what he's saying. We're not talking about Eastern religions here. We're talking about Christianity, and that, of course, is the main school of thought here in the West. Now, to most, this global body will seem like a wonderful thing. Didn't we, when we say everybody, I was amazed when they did a poll about millenniums and the group of kids prior to, after the millenniums. About 80% believe that the global world is a wonderful thing. Globalism is wonderful. A one world order, one world religion is wonderful. So they're already hoodwinked. And very possibly will be a pseudo-Christianity, right? Coming in the name of Christ. What better way to, deceive people than to, use Christ as a front, correct? However, contrary to how the masses will view it, it will actually help establish and set up the Antichrist and his one world government. In order for this to happen, all religions, all the ones we've talked about over the last 25 years on this show, must come together in an ecumenical plan. And today, as part of this satanic scheme, the evangelical Protestant church is being drawn seductively into the Roman Catholic Church, largely through what we call the Jesuit Agenda. Okay. Incredibly, this evidence is obvious to some people, but the majority of Americans, the majority of people, have no clue whatsoever. Now, when I say something like this, when I mentioned this satanic scheme, boy, it rattles the feathers of a lot of people, Catholic, card-carrying Catholics included. And they say, you're off your rocker. The Vatican is not at the highest level satanic. And I say, well, how about if I can prove to you that at an Easter service every year, when they start singing in Latin, they tell you they're worshiping Lucifer. And people go, wow, no. Well, it is true. They tell you at this Easter service most every year, and they do it many other times, that the first song they sing in Latin is invoking their homage and worship of Lucifer, not Christ. They're telling you right there. Now what that is, in a court of law, what is that? That's direct evidence from the accused party that he is guilty of what? Deceiving you, not being a Christian organization or worshiping Christ, but actually worshiping who? Lucifer. They tell you that. So what more do you, why would they do that if they didn't? Well, first they do it in Latin and nobody understands it. But secondly, they do it because they're an occult system that believes that gives them more strength. And you would not be surprised that many people also worship Lucifer. Yeah, that's what we talk about here. So, what we should expect, if we are in time with such a system that the Jesuits are doing to us, first, many who once were Protestant and evangelical will become ecumenical and eventually assimilate with the Roman Catholic Church. Yeah, come together with them, right? Correct? And people will go, well, that's good. Getting everybody together is good, but no, it's bad. And second, all religions will unite in solidarity of purpose. Now, understanding the Jesuit agenda is essential if we are to understand how this worldwide deception will come about. Now, when you look at it, when you go to your church on Sundays or Saturdays or whenever you go, you have to start looking for these signs because it is now seeped down from the hierarchies of churches into the local community churches. And also, the government officials, when you're watching TV, play a big role in this too. Remember the big speech by George Bush Sr. about the coming of a new world order and how great it would be? They're all working together to sell you the idea that globalism, a one world religion, a one world put together in a government is good. When in fact, it's just the opposite. Now, you have to understand who these guys are. And I'd be surprised, I've been talking about this for 25 years. And there's still, majority of the people, well, first of all, they don't want people to know this, so they try to make, what they'll do is, Google is not a friend of this show. And they will do everything possible to keep the numbers down. Now, I find it interesting that some people who claim to be anti-Jesuit, seem to get away with what people like Alex Jones gets away with, okay? Good example of a COINTEL operative working in the system, lying to you, okay? Since its foundation, so you have to understand who the Jesuits are, because I'm surprised that most people don't even know. Or they'll say, oh, I don't know. Or, oh, there are those educated priests. That's all. They're great educators. And that's how they bill themselves. But since its foundation, the Catholic papacy has been zealous and often brutal in its endeavor to establish the kingdom of the Pope, of whom it is believed within the Catholic Church is headed by Christ. Now, one of my favorite topics of discussion happens to be Papal Infallibility. Now, where the hell did this come from? Now, you grow up in the Catholic Church and they tell you the Pope is Christ on earth. Well, where did this start? Believe it or not, it started in the mid-1800s. Prior to the mid-1800s, the Catholic Church said the Pope wasn't infallible and not Christ on earth. But magically, after a maniac Pope, Leo, I believe his name was, decided that papal infallibility should be included in the Catholic agenda. And so basically, to get that done, they had to have a vote by the College of Cardinals, and many of them didn't want it, but the Jesuits twisted their arm, and magically, within one day, the Pope became Jesus Christ. Now think about it. How many popes are there alive today? There's 2. So we have 2 Christs on earth? Pope, remember? There's one that's resigned, and then we have one in office. They're both Christ? How can that be? Well, it isn't. It's a complete farce. And that's what they do to you. And there's many Catholics today who go to the Pope and kiss his ring and do all that kind of stuff thinking he's Christ, when actually he worships Lucifer. Now, in fact, the Pope is referred to as the Vicar of Christ now. And that's because of that maniac Pope. And you go read that story. This determination was witnessed during the Inquisition, where countless thousands, millions, died cruelly for resisting Rome's pressure to stop reading the Bible. And a great book to read is Fox's book on martyrs, and describes many of these atrocities. While many believers in Christ during the Reformation period attempted to spread the truth of God, the Word, it was truly God's Word, could not be squandered and kept hostage by the papacy. It was not long before the Counter-Reformation was founded. That's where the Jesuits come into play. That was in the 1500s. And to bring what they call the separated brethren back to the mother of all churches, the mother of all harlots. Yeah, that's what we're up against. And we're talking about the very organization that was founded and hasn't changed one bit, just their tactics have, and they've become, I think, even more deceptive and brutal today. So that's what we're going to get into. There's many of you, so don't, now I can refer you back to this show. For those of you emailing me, say, well, I don't quite understand what you're talking about. So you go to this show and you will get a little bit of information on it. Okay. So, I'm not going to go over like I did last time. I've been gone, the second week back after almost a month off, and I lost my timing. It's coming back slowly. But anyway, like I said, go to Greg Anthony's journal.wordpress.com. You can get shows. Wow. I can't believe how time flies. Over 15 years now. And also go to those sponsors that are now coming aboard. I'm working together with them to help you and also to keep this show on the air. Back in 3 minutes on the Investigative Journal.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on Internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org. When it comes to prophecy today, much of the evangelical Christian world has their eyes on Israel, waiting and watching to see when the Third Temple will begin to be built. The plans are drawn, the Jewish people are eager. Most evangelical Christians today believe that the rapture will happen before the Third Temple is built. Hi, I'm Michael Eugene. I was taught that Daniel's 70th week was in the future. Is that really what the Bible teaches? Have we searched the Scriptures and found this to be true? Why is it so important for a re-established Israel to build a third temple in Jerusalem? Is it necessary to build a temple on the same location already occupied by the Dome of the Rock? Is it necessary for sacrifices to take place in the temple on Temple Mount? Is there really a rapture followed by 7 years of tribulation? What is the New Testament temple? Can we identify history and prophecy? Who is the first beast in Revelation chapter 13? Who are the 7 kings in Revelation 17? I have asked all these questions, and I have found Nicholas Arthur's new book, When the Third Temple is Built, answers all these questions and more using Scripture to interpret Scripture. The Bible says that no prophecy of Scripture is of any private interpretation. Nicholas shows us in his new book, When the Third Temple is Built, how the Bible interprets prophecy and not man's private interpretation. Visit crosstheborder.org, C-R-O-S-S, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of Nicholas Arthur's new book titled When the Third Temple is Built. That's crosstheborder.org.
The following program is labeled dangerous and off limits by the supreme Jesuit command. But stand tall, people. Listen up, and you may just learn something.
Oh, dear Lord Jesus, this ain't happening, man. This can't be happening, man. This isn't happening.
Okay, we're back on the Investigative Journal, and wow, somebody already contacted me regarding the mom and pop funding company, the loan funding company and loan solutions. So someone is going to fill out an application, and hopefully I can help them stay in business, because you know something, my dad was a small businessman. I've been in several different small businesses, and I really believe they're getting screwed in this country. And hopefully the money that you need you can get, and I find that this company, out of all these companies that claim to loan you unsecured funds, this one's on the level. So it's Mom and Pop Loan Solutions. Okay, so get back. What are we talking about today? The Jesuits, of course, in a more general sense, so that people that come to some of my shows that are talking about specifics, how they infiltrated the Seventh-day Adventists, what they've done with Freemasonry, some other stories, about their involvement in the sinking of the Titanic, the killing of Abraham Lincoln, to name a couple. So they get an idea of what they're all about. and what their main agenda really is. So while many believers in Christ during the Reformation period attempted to spread the truth about God's Word, it was, what the Vatican had to do at that time was to create this military order called the Jesuits. And since then, they haven't changed one bit. But they bill themselves as the great educators. It's a deception, folks. Now, the Counter-Reformation was largely headed by a gentleman by the name of Ignatius Loyola, the man who founded the Jesuit order in the mid-1500s, and launched an all-out attack against those who dared stand against the papacy in Rome. Now, for those of you who say, well, they've changed, if they are a legitimate Christian organization, they would have disbanded them, and they wouldn't exist anymore. Who wants to follow in the footsteps of these murderers? But that's what you do when you join the Jesuit order. So, and what's a crying shame about the whole thing is that many of the lower level Jesuits have no idea about it. Now, Loyola headed up this Counter-Reformation, and I find it interesting that, I've looked over a lot of photos over the years, and I see our presidents, George Bush, a couple others, when they come visit the Pope, they sit under a picture of Ignatius Loyola. Now, if I was a president, I'd understand this story, and I'd say, I'm not sitting under that killer. But they don't. They bill him as a great saint. Okay. Now, this excerpt from Fox's Book of Martyrs, remember I mentioned that? Gives an idea of the nature and determination of this Counter-Reformation and how they still are determined today. And this is a quote from Fox's Book on Martyrs. The Emperor Ferdinand, whose hatred of the Bohemian Protestants was without bounds, not thinking it was sufficiently oppressing them, instituted a high court to prosecute the reformers upon the plan of the Inquisition, with this difference that the court was to travel from place to place and always to be attended by a body of troops. This court was conducted chiefly by Jesuits, and from their decision there was no appeal, by which it may be easily conjectured that it was a dreadful tribunal indeed. This bloody court, attended by the body of troops, made the tour of Bohemia. They seldom examined or saw a prisoner, for the soldiers were permitted to murder the Protestants as they pleased, and then to make a report of the matter to them afterwards. So what did they do? They were using the political arm of a country, like they do today, to kill Protestants. You see, the Jesuits were commissioned. By who? The Pope. To do whatever it took to end the Protestant Reformation. Now, the 1540 Constitution of the Jesuits states this: let whoever desires to fight under the sacred banner of the cross and to serve only God and the Roman Pontiff, his vicar on earth, after a solemn vow of perpetual chastity, let him keep in mind that this is a part of the society instituted for the purpose of perfecting souls in life and in Christian doctrine for the propagation of the faith. Let all members know, and let it be not only at the beginning of their profession, but let them think over it daily as long as they live, that the society as a whole and each of them owes obedience to our most holy Lord, the Pope, and the other Roman pontiffs, his successors, and to fight with faithful obedience for God. See, they twist it a little bit, don't they? While most Christians think that the Counter-Reformation is a thing of the past, because we are not seeing inquisitions today, well, what about what happened in Rwanda, folks? What do you call that? What about what happened to the, what about in Croatia right after World War II? What was that? What about the mission schools here when all the Native American kids were genocided? Oh, that's going on as we speak, but in a more subtle, deceptive way. So, in a way, it is a more insidious way what's going on today than the Inquisition itself, because now it has infiltrated Christianity and is being disguised as the new Christianity. You know, Rick Warren is he's one of these evangelical TV pastors, is a perfect example of someone bought and paid by the Jesuits. And he's called it the new, the second Reformation is happening. He's even told you. But disguised or not, it is the Jesuit agenda, and it is bringing about ecumenism in a one-world religion. And at the same time, it is attempting to destroy the message that so many in the past have died for. The message that Christ is not found in a wafer or a cup of juice to be re-crucified day after day, but has died once and for all the sins of man, and offers a salvation that is an entirely free gift. Doesn't cost you a penny. Doesn't mean you have to be in bondage to a priest or pay the Catholic Church anything for the souls after they die. Unearned to those who believe in him. And if you want to read about it, you can find that in Hebrews 7:27, 10, 11 through 14. But to get a little bit more specific for those of you who don't know, or who have forgotten, who was this Ignatius Loyola? You know, after a serious military injury and when he was in the military and during a lengthy rehabilitation, Loyola turned his focus from military enthusiasm to ghostly fanaticism. Ignatius assumed the name and office of the Knight of the Virgin Mary, seeing himself as Mary's favorite. Ignatius wanted to start a new order, the Society of Jesus, or the Jesuits, and presented the idea to the Pope. He told the Pope that the idea had been inspired by heavenly revelations. At first, the Pope hesitated, but when Loyola added a fourth vow, in addition to the regular poverty, chastity, and obedience, absolute subservience to the Pope, promising to do whatever the Pope wanted and go wherever he wanted, the Pope agreed and sent the new order out to invade the world. While other monks and other orders sought to separate themselves from the world, the Jesuits went out into the world and obeyed whatever command the Pope gave. Often, this was to win the world with a sword. No violent act was withheld if the order came from their top general. There's a Jesuit general today. Today you have a Jesuit Pope and a Jesuit general, getting closer and closer to what we're talking about here. One world government, one world order. In time, the Jesuits entered the educational system, especially that of the Protestants. The Jesuit maxim was, give us the education of the children of this day, and the next generation will be ours. Don't you think they're doing that today? The Reverend W.C. Bromley stated this, quote, they, the Jesuits, pretend to be converted and to enter the Protestant churches. One Jesuit even boasted that the Jesuits were successfully able to imitate the Puritan preachers. They used trickery and deception to become, quote, all things to all men, unquote. Within 48 years, there were 11,000 Jesuits around the world, quite a large number for being, back in the 1500s, right? By 1773, the order was abolished because of their horrible reputation of bloodiness, deception, and immorality. Now, on the surface, this is where a lot of people who studied the Jesuits get confused, I believe. See, they were abolished. Wasn't it interesting? They're abolished right, on the surface. And this is what people would hear all over the world, especially in the New World. 1773 is a pretty good date, isn't it, for you Americans? And the New World was filled with Protestants who understood they were leaving England, leaving Europe to get away from these people, the Jesuits. But when they heard the Jesuits were disbanded, what did they do? History doesn't record it, and even those who talk against the Jesuits don't like to talk about this for some reason. They can't buy it yet, maybe. But there's a great possibility that this was orchestrated by the Jesuit general Lorenzo Ricci in order to allow the Protestants to let their guard down. Because in Sun Tzu's Book of War, which was first translated by the Jesuits, what is the best way to defeat your enemy? That is to make him think you're weak. And what is even better, make him think you don't exist. And so maybe on the surface, in for the public consumption. They were disbanded, but they worked, I think, under the table even more to get their dirty little hands into America. And wasn't it amazing that they were reinstated fully in 1814? Oh, come on. Too much of a coincidence for this reporter. But anyway, one way or another, they got into this country. And even by this time, the influence and infiltration into the United States by the Jesuits was significant, and I believe by Ricci's plan of disbanding the Jesuits publicly, it enabled them to move even quicker. Now, 1857, we're going on, 180 years ahead? The Reverend Brownlee compiled a book of a translated document called The Secret Instructions of the Jesuits, found on the Boston College Library's website. For one, you can find it there. Was found. While Catholic sources say that the Secret Instructions is an untrue document, well, what do you expect them to say? Oh, no, that's really what we're about. There's enough evidence to indicate that it is true indeed. Naturally, it is so indicting against the papacy and the Jesuit order that one can understand from a human point of view why Catholic sources would say the document isn't true. They had no choice. But the facts are the Jesuit order was performing brutal, cruel acts to bring the world to Christ and the Mother Church, and that they were infiltrating every area of society to do so. This cannot be denied. Brownlee's book would be a worthwhile read for those who wish to understand more of the history of the Jesuits. And I recommend it as well. Okay, how much time do we got? No, we're only halfway through. So, we got the Jesuit Oath. We've talked about it many times. The Jesuit Oath, folks, isn't even known by many lower-level Jesuits. They take a number of vows. But when you get to the top, it gets serious. And you've already been handpicked, selected as one of the Pope's top assassins, in a sense. Now, it's said that the ancient Jesuits took the Jesuit Oath. This, of course, has been refuted by Catholic sources as a true oath taken by Jesuits of the past. Nevertheless, there is evidence enough that the oath did exist to include excerpts of it in this report. We have taken these excerpts from a book entitled Political and Economic Handbook by Thomas Edward Watson, published in 1916 and found in the Harvard College Library. You see what I mean? We have all this information out there today, folks, on the internet, all over the place, but less about the Jesuits. Well, you don't think they control it? So if you're going to Harvard in 1916, you can read all about it. And isn't it interesting, there were more people that understood the Jesuits back then than they do now. So it says, I do declare from my heart, this is their oath, without mental reservation, that the Pope is Christ's Vicar General, and he hath power to depose heretical kings, princes, and states, that they may safely be destroyed. Therefore, to the utmost of my power, I will defend this doctrine. I do further declare the doctrine of the Church of England, of the Calvinists, the Huguenots, and the Protestants to be damnable, and those to be damned who will not forsake the same. I do further declare that I will help, assist, and advise all or any of His Holiness agents in any place, wherever I shall be, and do my utmost to extirpate the heretical Protestant doctrine and to destroy all their pretended power. In another version of the Jesuit oath, the Jesuit is asked to promise that he will provide relentless war against all heretics, Protestants, and to hang, burn, waste, boil, flay, strangle, and bury alive those infamous heretics. This is found in the U.S. Congressional Record in 1913, page 3216. Be interesting. I haven't checked to see if it's still there. Now, the Jesuit, we got the oath, the Jesuit Agenda today. Well, let's look at it a little bit. We talk about it a lot on this show. Well, we're not saying the Jesuits are outrightly murdering Protestants by cutting their heads off if they don't convert to Catholicism. We are saying that the determination and efforts to convert Protestants back to the Mother Church still exists. Basically, while the methods may have changed, the plan and objectives have not. The following quote from an article titled Essay on Popery by Reverend Ingram Coben is taken from one of Fox's Book of Martyrs edition. It's very insightful. And he says this, Mr. Coben, the Jesuits, though at times expelled or pretendingly so from Rome, have been its awful emissaries to augment its power. The intrigues and deceptions of these men would fill volumes, and the convenience of their creed to deny or affirm anything or assume any profession, as it may serve their purpose, is too well known to need recapitulating here. These men have at all times assumed so much that even papal state has alternatively ejected them, and large numbers are now in this country, doubtless many under false colors, waiting the most favorable opportunities to corrupt the rising generation and, as much as possible, restore the dark days of former ages. The Jesuits are unchangeable. And folks, the Jesuits were driven in the past to bring back the lost brethren. And they are driven today with the same vision. Today, that vision is part of the Pope's Eucharistic evangelization of the world, drawing people to the Eucharistic Christ. Eucharistic evangelization is discussed at length in a book in an article called Another Jesus, the Evangelization of the Eucharistic Christ. Now, what about this Jesuit mystical spirituality in Protestant evangelical church? Is there some things they both have in common now? Well, so if the methods of converting lost or prodigal souls back to Rome have changed, what is the method to accomplish these goals today? You know, it is largely through what is called Jesuit spirituality. A 2002 book titled Contemplatives in Action, The Jesuit Way, reveal how the Jesuit order has had and continues to have a great influence in people around the world. It attributes this vitality in its spirituality, which has also evoked fierce loyalty and fierce opposition. What is this spirituality of the Jesuits that's so controversial? By their very roots, Jesuits are proponents of mystical prayer practices. The founder of the Jesuits, Ignatius Loyola, created spiritual exercises that incorporated mysticism, including Lectio Divina. Today, millions of people worldwide practice the spiritual exercises of Ignatius Loyola. One Jesuit priest who resonates with the mystical spiritual outlook is Anthony de Mello, author of Sadhana, A Way to God. De Mello is often quoted today by contemplative and emerging authors, embraced the mysticism of Hinduism, he stated. To silence the mind is an extremely difficult task. How hard is it to keep the mind from thinking, forever producing thoughts in a never-ending stream? Our Hindu masters in India have a saying, one thought is removed by another. By this they mean that you will be wise to use one thought to rid yourself of all other thoughts that crowd into your mind. One thought, one image, one phrase, one sentence, a word that your mind can be made to fasten on. That's from Anthony de Mello, A Way to God, written in 1978. Now, Ray Youngin explains that sadhana is very open in its acknowledgement of Eastern mysticism as an enrichment to Christian spirituality. So what de Mello is doing is bringing together the religions, correct? It doesn't take a long search to find de Mello with the evangelical Protestant camp. In fact, Richard Foster, one of the pioneers of the evangelical spiritual formation contemplative movement, wrote the introduction to one of de Mello's books, The Sacrament of the Present Moment. In A Glimpse of Christ, popular contemplative author Brennan Manning quotes de Mello. Amazon shows that de Mello's book, The Sacrament of the Present Moment, is cited in 82 books, some of which are written by some of evangelical's most popular authors. John Ortega, Richard Foster, Jan Johnson, Philip Yancey, and Calvin Miller. Another example of Jesuit influence in the evangelical Protestant church is the Be Still DVD, where Richard Foster quotes 18th century Jesuit priest Jean-Nicolas Gros as saying, "O Divine Master, teach me this mute language which says so much." This mute language, Gros speaks of, is a mystical silence practiced by contemplatives and mystics throughout all the world's religions. So you see what they're doing here. They're bringing everything together, right? Correct. Everything together. We've got about 2 minutes. Let's just move a little bit farther. How fitting that, well, here's one. Here's one we got to talk about. One of the key figures in the new progressive Christianity today is Leonard Sweet. Sweet has partnered on a number of occasions with Rick Warren and speaks at evangelical events frequently. In Sweet's book, Quantum Spirituality, he states, mysticism, once cast to the sidelines of the Christian tradition, is now situated in postmodernist culture near the center. In the words of one of the greatest theologians of the 20th century, Jesuit philosopher of religion, dogmatist Karl Rahner, quote, the Christian of tomorrow will be a mystic, one who has experienced something or will be nothing. Mysticism is metaphysics arrived at through mind-body experiences. Let's stop there today. We'll continue tomorrow. Maybe I'll have to do a little bit more background information on this for you. But how fitting it was that Sweet would quote a Jesuit priest's prediction about Christians and Christianity of the future. Wow. That is mind-boggling, isn't it? So you see how far they've come. See how far they've come to kind of mesh everything together. And there's so much more. I mean, just look at how this organization has grown throughout the years in America, starting out with one university, Georgetown, which is situated right next to the White House. And don't forget the School of Foreign Service, where most of our diplomats are trained right there, and was started by Father Edmund Walsh, who interestingly enough, after passed away, had a big ceremony at the White House and is on President Eisenhower's website. Yes. Why is he there? Well, some people say he was very, very instrumental in making sure that Eisenhower was the patsy general. That, many during the time of Ike were like mine, were going, how could this guy become the head of the World War II? He's, there were like 60 to 70 other guys well more qualified. Well, it's because there was a little connection between Father Edmund Walsh and the hierarchy of the American military. So anyway, that's another story for another day. You can also get that at my website at greganthonysjournal.wordpress.com. Go there, and we'll see you tomorrow on the Investigative Journal.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.